My name is Whitney Davis, 32 years old, and until last month I was the digital marketing director at Apex Solutions. For 6 years I poured my heart into that company, building their client portfolio from 5 to 50 major accounts. Then I discovered my boss secretly planning to take credit for my biggest campaign ever and push me out. Little did he know, getting fired would become the best thing that ever happened to my career. Before I tell you how I turned getting fired into a 6-figure consulting business, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever been undervalued at work. I graduated with a marketing degree from Northwestern University 12 years ago, bright-eyed and ready to conquer the advertising world. Those early career years were brutal. I bounced between 3 small agencies in Chicago, working 60-hour weeks for mediocre pay and even less recognition. My ideas were often stolen by senior staff, and I watched colleagues with less talent but better connections climb the ladder faster than me. When I landed the interview at Apex Solutions, a mid-sized digital marketing firm with some genuinely impressive clients, I felt like this could finally be my chance. The company had a solid reputation in the industry, handling accounts for regional hospital systems, financial institutions, and a few notable retail brands. Nothing Fortune 500 level yet, but respectable work with decent budgets. The interview process was intense. 4 rounds of interviews, a sample campaign presentation, and a personality assessment. When the offer finally came through, I celebrated by splurging on an expensive bottle of champagne. The salary was 20% higher than my previous position, with actual benefits and promised growth potential. Finally, a company that seemed to value talent and hard work. My first 2 years at Apex were everything I had hoped for. I started as a senior marketing strategist, leading campaigns for some of their mid-tier clients. My work consistently exceeded performance metrics, and clients started specifically requesting me on their accounts. I earned a promotion to team lead after 18 months, managing 3 junior strategists and handling our healthcare portfolio. The company culture at Apex initially seemed refreshingly meritocratic. The CEO, James Sullivan, was a tall, distinguished man in his early 50s who had built the company from scratch 15 years earlier. He maintained an open-door policy and made a point to recognize exceptional work during monthly all-hands meetings. While he was somewhat distant, focused more on high-level business development than day-to-day operations, he seemed fair and respected expertise. My immediate boss for the first few years was Garrett Mitchell, the marketing vice president. Initially, Garrett was supportive and served as a mentor. He was 45, ambitious but seemingly secure in his position, and good at navigating office politics. He would frequently bring me into important client meetings, giving me credit for successful campaigns and gradually increasing my responsibilities. I also formed a close friendship with Amanda Hayes from the creative department. She was around my age, whip-smart with an incredible eye for design. We often collaborated on projects, our complementary skills creating some of Apex's most innovative campaigns. We started having weekly lunch dates to brainstorm ideas and eventually became friends outside of work as well. Rachel Morgan ran human resources with rigid adherence to company policies. She was efficient but cold, more concerned with liability prevention than employee well-being. Most staff kept interactions with her to a minimum, recognizing she was loyal to management above all else. By my 4th year, I had been promoted to digital marketing director, overseeing 2 teams with a total of 8 employees. My department was consistently the highest performing in the company, bringing in 35% of total revenue. I had developed genuine relationships with many of our clients who trusted my strategic insights and appreciated my commitment to their success. The biggest breakthrough came when I identified an opportunity to pitch Lincoln Motors, a luxury car manufacturer that would be by far our most prestigious client. Their regional marketing efforts had been fragmented, and I developed a comprehensive proposal for a unified digital approach that would increase dealer traffic while maintaining brand exclusivity. The pitch required weeks of preparation. I researched automotive industry trends, analyzed competitor strategies, and developed a custom approach that would set Lincoln apart in the digital space. I rehearsed my presentation dozens of times, anticipating potential questions and preparing detailed responses. When pitch day arrived, Garrett insisted on leading the introduction, but agreed I would present the meat of the strategy since it was primarily my work. The Lincoln team, led by their marketing director Tyler Bennett, seemed impressed by our approach. Tyler was particularly engaged with my sections on targeted customer journey mapping and luxury conversion optimization. 2 weeks later, we received the news that Lincoln Motors had selected Apex Solutions as their digital marketing partner. The $2.5 million annual contract was more than double our previous largest account. James personally congratulated me during the celebration, acknowledging my role in securing this landmark client. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking that will take Apex to the next level," he said, raising a toast in my direction. That should have been the beginning of an even more successful chapter in my career. Instead, it marked the point when everything started to change. I first noticed something was off when Garrett began excluding me from certain meetings with the Lincoln team. When I asked about it, he casually mentioned they were just administrative check-ins that did not require my expertise. Then I found myself copied on emails discussing strategy decisions I had not been consulted about. Amanda noticed the shift too. "Is it just me, or is Garrett acting weird lately?" she asked during one of our lunch breaks. "He keeps coming by the creative department asking about your projects." I brushed off these concerns initially. My work spoke for itself, and client satisfaction remained high. Surely Garrett was just taking a more hands-on approach with our highest-profile client, which made sense given its importance to the company. I could not have been more wrong. As the lead on the Lincoln Motors account, I spent countless hours developing an innovative strategy that would revolutionize their digital presence. The campaign centered around an interactive customer experience platform that would allow potential buyers to customize vehicles online and schedule personalized showroom visits. The data collection would then enable highly targeted follow-up marketing. It was ambitious but executable, and the Lincoln team had enthusiastically approved the concept. I assembled a dedicated team for this account, selecting our best talent across all departments. We set up a special project room with timeline charts, user journey maps, and creative concepts covering the walls. I would often stay until 9 or 10 at night refining approaches and ensuring every detail aligned with Lincoln's premium brand positioning. That is when Garrett began inserting himself more aggressively into the process. His requests for progress updates became daily occurrences, often scheduled at odd times that disrupted my workflow. He started joining meetings I had arranged with my team, speaking over me, and occasionally contradicting strategy elements we had already finalized. Most concerning, I began noticing my ideas appearing in company-wide presentations without attribution. Concepts I had developed for Lincoln were suddenly being presented as general Apex methodologies, with Garrett discussing them as though they were collective innovations rather than my specific contributions. Tyler Bennett from Lincoln Motors proved to be an exacting client. He had specific ideas about luxury marketing and required extensive data to support every recommendation. I spent hours preparing detailed reports to address his concerns and build his confidence in our approach. Despite his demanding nature, we developed a solid working relationship based on mutual respect for each other's expertise. However, I started noticing a change in my interactions with Tyler as well. Garrett began scheduling private meetings with him, excluding me, despite my role as account lead. When I would follow up with Tyler, he would reference conversations and decisions I had not been part of. During one presentation to the Lincoln team, I had prepared a comprehensive walkthrough of our implementation timeline. Before I could get through the third slide, Garrett interrupted. "What Whitney has outlined is the basic framework," he said, taking control of the presentation, "but let me walk you through the strategic innovations we are implementing at a leadership level." He proceeded to present my work as though it had originated from executive discussions to which I was not privy. Tyler directed most of his questions to Garrett for the remainder of the meeting, while I sat there feeling increasingly invisible. The following day, Amanda pulled me aside after noticing my subdued mood. "You need to be careful," she warned in a hushed voice, as we stood in the empty break room. "I overheard Garrett telling James that he had to step in on the Lincoln account because you were struggling with the scope." "That is absolutely not true," I replied, feeling my face flush with anger and disbelief. "I know that," Amanda said, squeezing my arm sympathetically. "But Garrett sees you as a threat. Your success with Lincoln makes him look unnecessary, if you can land and manage accounts of that size without him." Her warning made sense, but I still wanted to believe that merit would prevail. That evening, I tried to access some of my strategy documents on our shared server, only to discover my permissions had been changed. I could no longer edit files I had created, only view them. The next morning I arrived early to find Garrett already in a conference room with two of my team members. They looked uncomfortable when I walked past, and the conversation abruptly halted. Later that day, my senior copywriter mentioned that Garrett had been asking detailed questions about my management style and decision-making process. I decided a direct approach might clear the air. I stopped by Garrett's office and casually brought up my concerns about communication gaps developing on the Lincoln account. "I feel like we are not aligned on some key elements of the strategy," I said, keeping my tone professional and collaborative. "It would be helpful if we could coordinate more before client meetings." Garrett leaned back in his chair, an inscrutable expression on his face. "Whitney, as the account grows, we need to streamline management. The executive team feels we need more senior-level guidance on premium accounts like Lincoln. Nothing personal, just standard procedure as we scale." His dismissive response left me with a growing sense of unease. That night, I had trouble sleeping, my mind racing with doubts and contingency plans. The next morning, I began meticulously documenting all my work and contributions, saving copies to my personal email as a precaution. Over the following weeks, I noticed other troubling patterns. Client feedback that should have come directly to me was being routed through Garrett first. My team members seemed hesitant to share information, as though they had been instructed to clear things with Garrett before involving me. I was being systematically sidelined from the very account I had brought into the company. Then came the most alarming development of all. While working late one evening, I overheard Garrett in the adjacent conference room on a phone call door slightly ajar. "The restructuring makes sense," he was saying to someone. "We can distribute her team among the other directors and position it as an efficiency improvement. James already agrees that consolidating leadership on premium accounts creates better client continuity." My stomach dropped. There was no doubt in my mind who her referred to. They were planning to eliminate my position entirely. The confirmation of my suspicions came in the most unexpected way. I was at my desk early one morning when an email notification popped up. The sender was Tyler Bennett from Lincoln Motors. But what caught my attention was that it appeared to be a response mistakenly sent to me instead of Garrett. The subject line read, "Whitney Davis Role Adjustment." My heart pounding, I opened the email and began reading. "Garrett, thanks for the update on the internal restructuring. While I understand your rationale for taking direct control of our account, I want to express some concern about losing Whitney's direct involvement. Her strategic approach to our digital customer journey has been instrumental in our early results. Can you clarify how this transition will ensure consistency in our campaign execution, Tyler?" I felt physically ill. The email confirmed that Garrett had been discussing removing me from the Lincoln account without my knowledge. Worse, he was presenting it to the client as though it were already decided. With shaking hands, I began searching through our shared drives, looking for any documentation related to this restructuring. In a folder marked Q3 Strategic Planning that I normally would not have accessed, I found a PowerPoint presentation titled Lincoln Motors Campaign Leadership. Opening it revealed slides detailing the campaign strategy I had developed, but with Garrett listed as the strategic lead and my name relegated to a supporting role. Further digging uncovered a draft organizational chart for the marketing department with my position completely eliminated, my team members redistributed under other directors. The document properties showed Garrett as the author created 3 weeks earlier. The betrayal cut deep. For 6 years, I had given everything to Apex. I had built relationships with clients, mentored junior staff, and consistently delivered results that helped grow the company. Now my boss was not only taking credit for my work, but actively plotting to push me out. I spent the rest of the morning in a fog, alternating between rage and disbelief. My hands trembled as I tried to respond to routine emails. My chest felt tight, and I found myself taking frequent trips to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face and try to regain my composure. By afternoon, I had formulated a plan to confront Garrett with what I had discovered. I requested a meeting, and he reluctantly agreed to see me at the end of the day. When I entered his office, he was already packing up his things, making it clear he did not intend for this to be a lengthy conversation. "I came across some concerning documents today," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "There seems to be a plan to remove me from the Lincoln account and potentially eliminate my position altogether. I would appreciate some transparency about what is happening." Garrett's expression flickered between surprise and annoyance before settling into a practiced look of confusion. "I am not sure what documents you are referring to, Whitney. We are always evaluating our organizational structure, but no decisions have been finalized about any specific positions. I saw the presentation that removes me as lead on the LinkedIn account I pressed, and I was accidentally copied on an email you sent to Tyler discussing my role adjustment. At this, Garrett's demeanor changed. His eyes hardened and he set down his bag. Look, Whitney, business decisions are not always personal. The LinkedIn account requires a certain level of senior leadership involvement that extends beyond your current role. Tyler has expressed a preference for working directly with me on strategic elements. That directly contradicts what Tyler said in his email, I countered. He specifically expressed concern about losing my involvement. Garrett waved his hand dismissively. You are misinterpreting a courtesy response. Tyler understands the value of executive oversight on an account of this magnitude. Each word felt like a slap. Garrett was not only lying to my face but gaslighting me about communications I had seen with my own eyes. I would like to discuss this with James, I said, referring to the CEO. These changes impact a client I brought to the company and a team I built. James is traveling this week, Garrett replied quickly, and frankly, he trusts the executive team to make these operational decisions. I would suggest focusing on your current responsibilities rather than organizational charts that are still in draft form. I left his office feeling utterly defeated. It was clear Garrett had been methodically building a case against me while protecting himself from any accusations of impropriety. The next day brought another shock. Amanda texted me during lunch. People are saying you are looking for another job. Garrett told the creative team not to share LinkedIn materials with you because you might take them to a competitor. The false rumor was clearly designed to isolate me further. When I returned to the office, I noticed team members avoiding eye contact. My administrative assistant reluctantly informed me that she had been instructed to forward all LinkedIn-related correspondence to Garrett for continuity purposes. I attempted to schedule a meeting with Tyler from LinkedIn to clarify the situation, but received an automated response that all vendor communications should now go through their new portal, which conveniently required access credentials I did not have. During the weekly status meeting, Garrett announced that he would be temporarily overseeing the LinkedIn account due to some potential changes in Whitney's responsibilities. The way he phrased it left the clear impression that I was either being promoted or voluntarily stepping back, neither of which was true. Later that week, I had a scheduled call with another client who had previously worked with LinkedIn's CMO. During our conversation, he casually mentioned, I heard you had some issues with the LinkedIn implementation. Garrett was telling me about it at the industry mixer last week. My blood ran cold. Garrett was actively damaging my professional reputation with other clients. That evening, I stayed late at the office, copying important documents and taking screenshots of emails that demonstrated my contributions. I forwarded them to my personal account, careful to include only materials I had personally created and no proprietary client information. The final confirmation of betrayal came the following Monday. An all-hands meeting was scheduled unexpectedly, and the topic was listed as organizational announcements. Before the meeting, I discovered a document in Rachel from HR's printer tray titled Termination Procedure Whitney Davis with that day's date. After 6 years of dedication, countless late nights, and millions in revenue I had helped generate, Apex Solutions was planning to fire me without even the courtesy of a private conversation first. The meeting invitation arrived in my inbox at 9:15 that morning, confidential personnel discussion at 10:30, with Rachel Morgan from HR and Garrett Mitchell. The location was the small conference room on the executive floor, away from the main work areas. I knew immediately what it meant. For the next hour, I sat at my desk in a strange state of calm, methodically organizing my personal and professional files. I backed up contact information for clients I had good relationships with, and made sure my portfolio of work was secure. I also took a few minutes to update my barely used LinkedIn profile, removing any mention of potential termination and emphasizing my achievements at Apex. As 10:30 approached, I took a deep breath, straightened my navy blue blazer, and walked to the elevator with my head held high. Several colleagues watched me pass, their expressions a mix of sympathy and discomfort. News traveled fast in office environments, and the signs of my impending dismissal must have been obvious to everyone but me. The conference room was already occupied when I arrived. Rachel sat with a folder of documents spread before her, her expression professionally neutral. Garrett was beside her, attempting an unconvincing look of regret. A third chair waited for me across the table, positioned so that I would face both of them like a defendant before judges. "Whitney, please have a seat," Rachel began as soon as I closed the door. "We have called this meeting to discuss the termination of your employment with Apex Solutions effective immediately." Despite expecting it, the words still felt like a physical blow. 6 years of my professional life dismissed with a single clinical sentence. "The decision has been made following a review of your recent performance and concerns about client relationship management." Rachel continued, sliding a document toward me. "This letter outlines the terms of separation, including 2 weeks of severance pay and information about continuation of benefits." "What specific performance issues are you referring to?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Rachel glanced at Garrett, who cleared his throat before responding. "There have been concerns from the Lincoln Motors team about campaign direction and communication," he stated, not quite meeting my eyes. "Additionally, we have been evaluating our departmental structure and determined that consolidating leadership would better serve our premium clients." "That is interesting," I replied, "considering I brought Lincoln Motors to Apex and developed the entire campaign strategy they are currently implementing." Whitney, Garrett sighed with practiced patience. "This kind of defensive response exemplifies the communication issues we have been experiencing. The company has made its decision. We would like to make this transition as smooth as possible." Rachel pushed another document forward. "This is a list of company property that needs to be returned today, including your laptop security badge and client contact information. Just hand over your contacts and go," Garrett added with poorly disguised impatience. "We will handle the client transitions." The phrase struck me as particularly callous. My contacts represented relationships I had built over years, people who trusted me professionally and personally. And now, I was expected to simply hand them over like they were company equipment. "I will need some time to gather my personal belongings," I said, maintaining my composure. "Of course," Rachel nodded. "Kevin from security will accompany you to your desk. We ask that you limit your time to 30 minutes and refrain from accessing the company network during that period." As we stood to leave, Garrett added, "We will need all client contact information before you depart. Email the file to both Rachel and me." I nodded silently, my mind already formulating a plan. Kevin, a security guard I had greeted every morning for years now, stood awkwardly beside my desk as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. Around me, colleagues pretended to be absorbed in their work, the atmosphere thick with uncomfortable silence. Amanda caught my eye from across the room, her expression a mix of outrage and sympathy. While packing, I prepared the requested contact file. I included every client name, email, and phone number as requested. But at the bottom of the document, I added a simple line. "For strategic consulting inquiries, www.whitneydavisconsulting.com, with a link to a basic website I had created weeks earlier as a precaution when I first suspected something was wrong." I had not planned to launch a consulting business immediately, but Garrett's coldness crystallized my resolve. I would not beg for my job back, but I would ensure that clients knew they had options for continuing to work with me. I emailed the contact file as requested, copied my personal items to a USB drive, and cleared out my desk with dignity. As Kevin escorted me to the elevator, I held my head high, though inside I was cycling through waves of anger, humiliation, and fear. The elevator doors closed on my view of the office that had been my professional home for 6 years. As I descended to the lobby, a moment of panic gripped me. What had I just done? How would I pay my mortgage? Would Garrett's narrative about me damage my professional reputation beyond repair? But by the time I reached the first floor, a strange clarity had replaced the panic. This was not the end of my career, but rather a forced, fresh start. I had skills, experience, and relationships that extended beyond Apex Solutions. Walking through the lobby one last time, I nodded to the receptionist, who gave me a small, sad smile. Outside in the parking garage, I placed my box of belongings in the trunk of my car and sat in the driver's seat, finally allowing myself a moment to process what had happened. Tears came then, hot and furious. I gripped the steering wheel and let the emotions wash over me, the betrayal, the injustice, the fear of an uncertain future. But beneath the pain, another feeling was taking root: determination. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "This is total BS. You deserve so much better. Let me know how I can help." I took a deep breath, dried my eyes, and typed a response that surprised even me with its confidence. They have no idea what they have just done. That first evening after being fired was a surreal blur. I drove home in a daze, carried my sad box of office mementos into my apartment, and collapsed on the couch. The reality of my situation hit in waves. I had no job, a reputation potentially damaged by Garrett's machinations, and a mortgage payment due in 2 weeks. After an hour of alternating between tears and staring blankly at the wall, I called my sister Stephanie, who had always been my emotional anchor. "Those absolute jerks," she fumed after I explained what happened. "After everything you did for that company." I know I agreed, finding comfort in her outrage on my behalf. The worst part is how calculatingly Garrett set me up. He was taking credit for my work for months while actively undermining me. "So what are you going to do?" Stephanie asked. "Fight it legally?" I had already considered this option. I am not sure that would be worth the emotional toll. Plus, Massachusetts is an at-will employment state. They can fire me for almost any reason, as long as it is not discriminatory. "Then what is your plan, Whitney?" "You always have a plan." Her confidence in me sparked something. I did always have a plan. My strategic thinking was what made me excellent at my job, and those skills did not disappear just because Apex no longer valued them. "I think I am going to accelerate my consulting business idea," I said, the concept solidifying as I spoke. "I already have the basic website up. I could expand it, define my service offerings, and reach out to connections outside of Apex." "That sounds perfect," Stephanie encouraged. "You've always been better than that place anyway." That night, sleep eluded me as my mind raced with financial concerns. My savings would cover expenses for about 3 months, but I had just refinanced my condo, and the new higher mortgage payment loomed large in my calculations. I woke the next morning with puffy eyes, but renewed determination. I moved my laptop to the spare bedroom that had functioned as a casual home office and began transforming it into a proper workspace. I hung my marketing certifications on the wall, set up a professional backdrop for video calls, and created a detailed to-do list. First priority, upgrading my consulting website. I spent the entire day building out service offerings based on my expertise: digital marketing strategy, campaign development, client acquisition systems, and marketing team management. For each, I crafted detailed descriptions of my approach and potential deliverables. Then came the most difficult decision: pricing. Working at an agency, I knew my skills generated hundreds of thousands in revenue, but I had never had to assign a direct value to my own time. After researching industry standards and considering the premium nature of my expertise, I set my consulting rate at $500 per hour. It was significantly higher than what my effective rate had been at Apex, but I knew the value I provided justified the premium. High rates also tended to attract serious clients who respected expertise, rather than those looking for budget services. I would rather have fewer high-quality clients than spread myself thin with low-paying work. Next, I needed to consider which clients might follow me. My employment contract contained a non-compete clause prohibiting me from soliciting Apex clients for 1 year after termination. I scheduled a consultation with Bethany Lewis, an attorney friend who specialized in employment law. The good news, Bethany told me during our meeting the following day, is that Massachusetts courts tend to narrowly interpret non-compete clauses, especially when the employee did not receive significant compensation for the restriction. "So what exactly can I do?" I asked. "You cannot directly solicit Apex clients," she explained. "However, if they contact you independently, you can absolutely work with them. And general announcements about your new business like LinkedIn updates are typically not considered direct solicitation." Armed with this knowledge, I carefully crafted a LinkedIn announcement about my new consulting venture. Without mentioning Apex or the circumstances of my departure, I simply stated I was excited to announce the launch of Whitney Davis Consulting, offering premium digital marketing strategy services to select clients. Within hours, my post had dozens of supportive comments and messages from colleagues, former clients from previous agencies, and industry connections. The positive response bolstered my confidence that I had a professional network beyond Apex. One message particularly caught my attention. Martin Chen, the marketing director at a small luxury watchmaker that had been an Apex client during my early years there, wrote, "Perfect timing, Whitney. We have been dissatisfied with our current agency. Would love to discuss potential collaboration." As a former client who had left Apex 2 years earlier, Martin was not covered by the non-compete restrictions. We scheduled a call for the following day, and by the end of our conversation, I had my first consulting client at my full rate. That small victory gave me momentum, but I was still concerned about my financial runway. I created a detailed budget, cutting all non-essential expenses and calculating exactly how long I could sustain myself before needing a steady income. The numbers were tight but manageable if I could secure just 2 or 3 regular clients within the next month. On the morning of my 4th day of unemployment, an unexpected email arrived that changed everything. The sender was Tyler Bennett from Lincoln Motors. "Whitney, I was surprised to hear about your departure from Apex. There seems to be conflicting information about the circumstances. Garrett mentioned you left to pursue other opportunities, but when I asked about transition details for our campaign, his answers were concerning. Do you have time for a confidential conversation?" My heart raced as I read his message. Clearly, Garrett was struggling to maintain the narrative he had created. I carefully composed my response, mindful of legal boundaries. "Tyler, thank you for reaching out. I am happy to discuss the transition of the Lincoln account as a professional courtesy. While I have indeed moved into independent consulting, I want to ensure your campaign maintains its strategic integrity. I am available for a call at your convenience." Tyler suggested meeting in person rather than over the phone. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between his office and my apartment the following morning. I spent the evening preparing, reviewing the Lincoln campaign documents I had saved, and planning what I could ethically share without violating any confidentiality agreements. I also researched recent developments in automotive digital marketing to ensure I could provide current insights if asked. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived 15 minutes early, giving me time to select a discreet table in the corner and calm my nerves. Tyler arrived precisely on time, his expression serious as he spotted me and walked over. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as he sat down. "I will be direct, Whitney. Things have gone downhill with the Lincoln campaign since you left Apex. Garrett has made significant changes to the strategy you developed, and the preliminary results are concerning." "I am sorry to hear that," I replied carefully. "What kind of changes?" "He scrapped the interactive customer journey platform that was central to your strategy," Tyler explained, frustration evident in his voice. "He claims it was too expensive and complicated to implement effectively. Instead, he is pushing a more traditional digital approach that frankly is not what we signed up for." I took a sip of my coffee, buying time to formulate a response that would not constitute disparagement of my former employer. "The interactive platform was designed specifically for Lincoln's target demographic," I said finally. "The research indicated that luxury car buyers value personalized experiences and are willing to engage more deeply with brands that offer them. A traditional approach might not capture the same level of engagement." Tyler nodded emphatically. "Exactly. But when I raised these concerns with Garrett, he insisted that you had overestimated the platform's effectiveness. He claimed the strategy was being adjusted based on internal testing data." "That is interesting," I replied, choosing my words carefully. The platform concept was backed by substantial research and had been approved by both the Apex executive team and Lincoln's marketing committee. Tyler studied me for a moment, then pulled out his tablet. "The reason I wanted to meet in person is that I need to show you something confidentially." He pulled up a document and turned the screen toward me. "This is our latest analytics report from the campaign. The engagement metrics have dropped 30% since the changes were implemented." I reviewed the data, which clearly showed the decline in user interaction and conversion rates. The numbers confirmed what I had suspected. Garrett's changes were undermining the campaign's effectiveness. "I appreciate you sharing this with me, Tyler. May I ask what you are hoping to achieve from our conversation?" Tyler leaned forward. "Frankly, Whitney, we are considering our options. Lincoln invested in Apex largely because of the innovative strategy you presented. Now, that strategy has been abandoned, and we are getting poor results with little explanation." "I understand your concern," I replied. "As you know, I have recently established my own consulting practice. While I cannot directly solicit Apex clients, I can certainly offer my services if a client independently seeks them out." "That is precisely why I wanted to meet," Tyler said with a slight smile. "Lincoln Motors is preparing to formally terminate our contract with Apex Solutions due to failure to deliver on the promised strategy. We would be very interested in discussing a consulting arrangement with you to salvage the original campaign concept." My pulse quickened at this unexpected opportunity, but I maintained my professional demeanor. I would be happy to discuss how my consulting services could support Lincoln Motors' digital marketing goals. However, I want to be transparent about my rates and ensure there are no conflicts with your existing contract terms. Tyler nodded appreciatively. I respect your professionalism, Whitney. What is your consulting rate? $500 per hour, I stated confidently, watching carefully for his reaction. To my relief, Tyler did not flinch at the figure. That is within our budget for specialized expertise. Why do not you send over a formal proposal outlining how you would approach reestablishing the original strategy? Once our legal team has completed the termination process with Apex, we can move forward quickly. As we parted ways, I felt a mix of vindication and trepidation. Working with Lincoln would be a significant boost to my fledgling consulting business, but I knew it would also escalate tensions with Garrett and Apex. Still, I had not solicited Lincoln. They had sought me out based on their dissatisfaction with Apex's performance after my departure. That evening, I prepared a detailed consulting proposal for Lincoln Motors, carefully outlining how I would help them implement the original interactive platform strategy while respecting all legal and ethical boundaries regarding my former employer. As I worked, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. The office is in chaos. Lincoln just called and threatened to pull their contract. Garrett is freaking out and blaming everyone. Thought you would want to know. I smiled to myself as I replied, Thanks for the update. Interesting timing. The pieces of my new professional life were falling into place faster than I could have anticipated. The question now was how Apex and particularly Garrett would respond when they realized what was happening. 1 week later, the professional landscape had shifted dramatically. Lincoln Motors had officially terminated their contract with Apex Solutions, citing significant deviations from the agreed-upon strategy and unsatisfactory performance metrics. The news sent shockwaves through the agency, as Lincoln had been their most prestigious client and a centerpiece of their growth strategy. I learned about the fallout from Amanda, who continued to provide updates on the chaos unfolding at my former workplace. According to her, Garrett had frantically called Tyler at Lincoln more than a dozen times, each call becoming increasingly desperate. He had offered discount rates, promised executive oversight from James Sullivan himself, and even tried to recreate elements of my original strategy, but it was too late. Lincoln had lost confidence in Apex's ability to deliver without me at the helm. James finally realized something was seriously wrong. Amanda texted me. He called an emergency executive meeting yesterday and demanded to know how we lost the Lincoln account so quickly. Garrett tried blaming you, claiming you sabotaged the relationship on your way out. I had expected Garrett to deflect responsibility, but the accusation of sabotage was a new low. Fortunately, I had documented everything meticulously and stayed well within legal and ethical boundaries. Lincoln had approached me, not the other way around, and I had been careful not to disparage Apex in our discussions. Meanwhile, I had signed an official consulting contract with Lincoln Motors to implement the interactive customer experience platform I had originally designed. Tyler had even increased the scope beyond my initial proposal, bringing my monthly consulting income from Lincoln alone to more than I had earned at Apex. The true vindication came when 3 additional former Apex clients reached out to me within days of the Lincoln news spreading through industry channels. Each expressed dissatisfaction with recent changes in their account management and inquired about my availability for consulting. By the end of my second week of unemployment, I had signed contracts with 2 of them. Amanda continued to provide insights into the deteriorating situation at Apex. The finance team is panicking about the revenue projections without Lincoln. They are talking about potential layoffs if we cannot replace the business quickly. I took no pleasure in the thought of my former colleagues suffering, but I did feel a sense of justice knowing that Garrett's actions were having consequences. His attempt to claim credit for my work and push me out had backfired spectacularly, leaving Apex in a precarious position. Then came the call I had been half expecting, half dreading. 2 weeks after my termination, my phone rang, with a number I recognized immediately. James Sullivan, CEO of Apex Solutions. I let it ring 3 times, composing myself, before answering with a calm, professional tone. Whitney Davis speaking. Whitney. James began, his voice a mix of authority and discomfort. I think we need to have a conversation about recent developments. I would be happy to speak with you, James, I replied evenly. Good. I would prefer to meet in person. Would you be available to come to the office tomorrow morning? The request surprised me. He wanted me to return to the place I had been escorted from by security just 2 weeks earlier. The symbolism was not lost on me. I would prefer a neutral location, I countered. However, if you feel the Apex office is necessary, I can accommodate that request. After a brief pause, James agreed. 10 o'clock tomorrow, then. I will have reception expecting you. I spent that evening preparing, meticulously selecting a sharp charcoal gray suit that I had never worn to the Apex office, styling my hair in a more confident updo than my usual work style, and reviewing all my documentation. One final time. This meeting would likely determine whether my relationship with Apex would be adversarial or professional going forward, and I wanted to ensure I projected strength without arrogance. Walking into the Apex building the next morning felt surreal. The security guard did a double take before awkwardly welcoming me back. In the elevator, I encountered 2 former team members who looked shocked to see me mumbling hurried greetings before focusing intently on their phones. The receptionist, who had always been friendly during my tenure, gave me a warm smile and whispered, "Good to see you, Whitney," before announcing my arrival to James's assistant. I was escorted to the main conference room rather than James's office, which immediately told me this would not be a one-on-one conversation. Sure enough, when the door opened, I found James seated at the head of the table with Garrett to his right and 2 other executive team members present. "Whitney, thank you for coming," James said, gesturing to a chair on the opposite side of the table. "I believe you know everyone here." I nodded and took my seat, placing my portfolio on the table before me but not opening it yet. "Yes, of course. Good morning, everyone." Garrett would not meet my eyes, his attention fixed on his tablet. The tension in the room was palpable. "I will get straight to the point," James began. "We have had some concerning developments with key accounts since your departure. Lincoln Motors has terminated their contract, citing strategic differences, and 2 other clients have reduced their engagement. In each case, your name has come up." "I see," I replied calmly. "How exactly has my name come up?" "They have indicated they were disappointed to lose access to your expertise," James said carefully. "Some have suggested they would prefer to work with you directly." Garrett finally spoke, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "What they do not realize is that you have access to their information because of your position at Apex. Using that to solicit business is not only unethical but potentially illegal under your non-compete agreement." I turned to face him directly for the first time. "I have not solicited any Apex clients, Garrett. Each client who has contacted me did so independently after learning of my departure. I have documentation of all communications which clearly show they initiated contact, not me." "That is a convenient interpretation," Garrett scoffed. "It is the factual sequence of events I countered, opening my portfolio and removing a printed timeline. Here is a documented record of all client communications, including their initial outreach to me. My attorney has reviewed these and confirmed I have not violated any terms of my employment agreement." James took the document, scanning it with a frown. "This shows Lincoln contacted you the day after your termination. How would they even know you had left so quickly? Unless you told them." "That would be an excellent question for Garrett," I replied evenly. According to Tyler Bennett, Garrett informed him I had left to pursue other opportunities, which was not the case, as we all know. Tyler became concerned when he saw significant changes to the campaign strategy we had developed, which prompted him to reach out to me directly. Garrett's face flushed. The changes were necessary improvements to an overly complicated strategy that was not performing. "That is interesting," I said, removing another document from my portfolio. "Because I have the analytics report showing engagement metrics dropping 30% after those changes were implemented. Tyler shared this with me during our meeting, which he requested to understand why the campaign was suddenly underperforming." James turned to Garrett, his expression hardening. "You told me the Lincoln account was on track despite the transition. These numbers tell a completely different story." "The data is all here," Garrett stammered, gesturing frantically to his tablet. "We just needed time for the strategy adjustments to take effect. Whitney is manipulating the interpretation of preliminary results." "These are not preliminary results," I noted. "This report covers 4 weeks of performance data showing a clear decline corresponding exactly with the strategy changes implemented after my departure." James set down the documents and looked at me intently. What exactly is your involvement with Lincoln now, Whitney? I have entered into a consulting arrangement to help them implement the interactive customer experience platform that was originally proposed. I answered honestly. I want to emphasize that this occurred only after they had already decided to terminate their relationship with Apex, and they initiated all discussions. Garrett opened his mouth to object, but James held up his hand to silence him. And the other clients who have contacted you? 2 have engaged my consulting services at this point. 1 is still evaluating options. James nodded slowly, then turned his tablet toward Garrett. On the screen was my consulting website displaying my service offerings and rates. Have you booked a call yet? He asked Garrett pointedly. The question hung in the air, its implication clear. James was asking if Garrett had considered hiring me to fix the problems he had created. Garrett's face went from red to white. You cannot seriously be suggesting that we hire Whitney as a consultant after you fired me for dubious reasons and then lost your biggest client because you could not execute the strategy I developed. I completed his sentence, keeping my tone professional, despite the satisfaction I felt. James sighed deeply, then asked the other executives to give us the room. Once they had left, he turned to Garrett. I need to speak with Whitney alone. Please wait in my office. Garrett looked as though he might protest, but after a tense moment, he gathered his things and left, closing the door with slightly more force than necessary. James rubbed his temples before addressing me. This is an unfortunate situation, Whitney. I should have been more directly involved in understanding the circumstances of your termination. Yes, you should have. I agreed, seeing no reason to soften the truth. I will be candid. We are in a difficult position with Lincoln and potentially other clients. The interactive platform you designed is central to what they want, and they clearly trust your expertise in implementing it. Would you consider a consulting arrangement with Apex to help us salvage these relationships? The request was exactly what I had hoped for but had not dared expect. James Sullivan, who had allowed me to be escorted from the building 2 weeks earlier, was now asking for my help. I would consider it, I replied carefully. However, I would have some conditions. Such as: first, my standard consulting rate is $500 per hour. Second, I would work independently, not as an Apex employee. Third, I would require direct client contact without intermediaries. And finally, I would not work directly with Garrett on any projects. James studied me for a long moment, clearly calculating the cost against the potential loss of major clients. Your rate is steep. So is losing millions in client revenue, I replied simply. My expertise apparently has more value than Apex recognized previously. Another long pause, then James nodded. Those terms are acceptable provided we establish clear boundaries regarding client relationships moving forward. I am open to reasonable contractual terms that protect both our interests, I agreed. I will have legal draft an agreement today, James said, standing to indicate our meeting was concluding. And Whitney, for what it is worth, I believe there were significant misunderstandings about your contributions and the circumstances of your departure. That is on me as CEO. It was as close to an apology as I was likely to get, and I accepted it with a professional nod. I appreciate that acknowledgement, James. As we walked toward the door, he asked, would you be willing to attend a brief meeting with the Lincoln team tomorrow? They have agreed to hear one final proposal from us before finalizing their transition away from Apex. I would be available assuming we have a signed consulting agreement in place first, I replied. Of course, James agreed. As I left the conference room, I caught sight of Garrett waiting in James's office across the hall. Our eyes met briefly, and the look of defeated anger on his face told me everything I needed to know about his future at Apex. I walked through the office toward the elevator, aware of the whispers and stares from my former colleagues. This time, however, I was not being escorted by security with a box of belongings. I was walking out as Whitney Davis, independent consultant, whose expertise was now valued at $500 per hour by the very company that had discarded her. As the elevator doors closed, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. Sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to your career. 1 year after that fateful day, I was escorted from Apex Solutions. My professional life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. Whitney Davis Consulting had outgrown my spare bedroom and now occupied a small but elegant office space in downtown Boston. The exposed brick walls, Modern furniture and large windows overlooking the city created exactly the professional yet creative atmosphere I had always wanted. The Lincoln Motors campaign had become a case study in successful digital customer engagement, with conversion rates 40% above industry standards. The interactive platform I had originally designed was now fully implemented, and Lincoln had extended my consulting contract for a second year at an increased rate. My client roster had grown steadily, but selectively. Rather than taking on every potential client, I carefully chose projects where I could add significant value and work with respectful collaborative teams. This selective approach allowed me to maintain my premium rates while delivering exceptional results. Perhaps the most satisfying development was hiring my first 2 employees. Amanda had eventually left Apex after growing frustrated with the toxic environment that persisted even after Garrett's departure. She now led the creative implementation of strategies I developed, bringing her exceptional design skills to our client projects. I had also hired a brilliant recent marketing graduate to handle analytics and research, giving her the mentorship and recognition I had craved early in my own career. Apex Solutions had undergone significant changes as well. After our consulting agreement helped retain the wavering clients, James had been forced to take a hard look at the company culture and leadership structure. Garrett had been demoted from his VP position after the Lincoln Motors fiasco, and within 3 months he had left to join a smaller agency across town. According to industry rumors, he was struggling to rebuild his reputation. James and I had developed a surprisingly amicable professional relationship. While I declined his eventual offer to return as an executive, we maintained a consulting arrangement where I provided strategic guidance on premium accounts. He occasionally called me directly for advice on potential new clients or campaign approaches, tacitly acknowledging the expertise he had previously undervalued. Beyond the professional success, the experience had transformed me personally in profound ways. The betrayal and subsequent vindication had taught me valuable lessons about workplace dynamics, self-advocacy, and resilience. I had learned to trust my instincts about people and situations. Looking back, there had been warning signs about Garrett's true character long before he actively worked to undermine me. His need for control, reluctance to share credit, and subtle put-downs of team members should have alerted me earlier. Now I paid close attention to how potential clients and collaborators treated others, recognizing that character reveals itself in small moments. Documentation had become second nature to me. Every project began with clear scope definitions. Every meeting ended with written summaries, and all verbal agreements were confirmed in writing. This habit protected both me and my clients from misunderstandings and created valuable reference points throughout our work together. The importance of direct client relationships could not be overstated. At Apex, layers of management had created opportunities for misrepresentation and credit stealing. In my consulting practice, I made direct communication a cornerstone of my approach, ensuring clients always knew exactly who was responsible for their results and could reach me directly with concerns or questions. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned to value myself appropriately. For years, I had accepted less compensation than my work was worth, believing that loyalty and excellence would eventually be recognized and rewarded. The painful experience of being discarded despite my contributions had forced me to recalibrate my understanding of professional value. My $500 hourly rate was not arbitrary. It reflected the measurable business outcomes I consistently delivered. This newfound confidence extended beyond pricing to boundary setting. I now declined projects that raised red flags, walked away from potential clients who showed disrespect, and built time for rest and personal development into my schedule. The result was not only a more profitable business, but a more sustainable and fulfilling career. I had also discovered the power of professional community. After experiencing betrayal, I had made it a priority to build a network of supportive, ethical professionals in my industry. We shared opportunities, offered honest feedback, and celebrated each other's successes. This contrasted sharply with the competitive undermining I had experienced at Apex and created a much healthier context for professional growth. One unexpected outcome was the opportunity to mentor other women facing similar situations. Several former colleagues and industry connections had reached out for advice after experiencing workplace betrayal or undervaluation. I found deep satisfaction in helping them document their contributions, negotiate better terms, or launch their own independent ventures. On the anniversary of my termination, I took my team to lunch at an upscale restaurant near our office. As we celebrated our successful first year, Amanda raised her glass in a toast. "To getting fired," she said with a grin. "The best thing that ever happened to you and consequently to us." We all laughed and clinked glasses. She was right. What had felt like a devastating professional failure had actually been the push I needed to recognize my true value and create a business that reflected my principles. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Tyler at Lincoln Motors. Their parent company was planning a global digital marketing initiative and wanted to discuss expanding our consulting relationship to include international markets. The opportunity would significantly grow my business and create new challenges I was excited to tackle. As I sat at my desk considering the proposal, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The painful termination, meeting the humiliating walk through the office with security, the fear and uncertainty of those first days of unemployment. Each difficult moment had been a necessary step toward building something far better than what I had lost. Getting fired had not been the end of my career, but rather the beginning of a more authentic and rewarding professional life. By pushing me out of a toxic environment, Garrett had inadvertently given me the gift of freedom to create success on my own terms. For anyone watching who might be facing their own professional betrayal or setback, I hope my story offers both inspiration and practical guidance. Document your contributions, know your worth, build genuine relationships, and trust that excellence will find its proper value in the right context. Sometimes the worst moments in our careers become turning points towards something far better than we could have imagined. What about you? Have you ever had a professional setback that ultimately led to something better? Share your experience in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that getting fired could be the beginning of their success story, not the end of it. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth is not determined by those who fail to recognize it.